06 hours, December 1942. Ladd Field, Fairbanks, Alaska. The thermometer outside the hangar reads 40 degrees below zero. At this temperature, oil turns into glue. Rubber shatters like glass. Exposed skin freezes in 60 seconds. The air doesn't just ite, it kills. It is a sterile, white hell. Inside the unheated hangar, the silence is heavy. It presses against your eardrums. A single mechanic drops a wrench. The sound cracks through the space like a pistol shot. The mechanic freezes. He looks toward the cockpit. He is afraid to breathe. He is afraid to disturb the pilot. The pilot is not a man. She stands by the nose wheel. She is 5 feet 3 inches of raw nerve. She wears a heavy B-3 bomber jacket that swallows her frame. Her hair is tucked under a leather helmet, but you can see the eyes. Piercing blue, calculating, cold as the ice on the runway. Her name is Jacqueline Cochran, and she is about to do something that half the United States Army Air Forces believes is impossible. She is about to fly a high-performance pursuit fighter into the teeth of an Arctic storm. She is not just a pilot. She is a test case, a gamble. She pulls a tube of lipstick from her flight suit pocket, deep red. She applies it with the precision of a sniper adjusting a scope. It is her armor. It is her war paint. The mechanics watch her. They whisper. They say she belongs in a kitchen. They say the P-38 is too much plane for a woman. They say the torque will flip her on takeoff. They are wrong. Cochran snaps the lipstick shut. She climbs the ladder. She swings her leg over the canopy rail. She drops into the cockpit. The smell hits her. It is the perfume of the war. 100-octane fuel, hydraulic fluid, cold aluminum, stale sweat. She straps in. The seat is hard. The cockpit is cramped. It was built for a lean young man, not a woman with curves. But she fits. She becomes part of the machine. Let's look at the machine. This is the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The Germans call it the fork-tailed devil. It is a twin-engine monster. 2 Allison V1710 engines, turbo-supercharged, 1,150 horsepower each. It is fast, it is lethal, and it is unforgiving. The P-38 is not like other planes. It has tricycle landing gear. It has counter-rotating propellers to cancel out the torque. It is a masterpiece of engineering. But in the Arctic, it is a temperamental beast. The oil coolers are located in the booms, far from the engines. In this cold, the oil can congeal in the lines. If that happens, the engine seizes. The prop stops. The pilot dies. Cochran knows this. She has memorized the manual. She has memorized the schematics. She knows more about this plane than the man who fueled it. She signals the ground crew. Clear prop. The starter whines. A high-pitched scream. The left engine coughs. Smoke belches from the exhaust stacks. Blue flame spits into the dark hangar. The engine catches. It roars. The vibration shakes the floor. Then the right engine. The sound is deafening. It is the sound of power. She checks her gauges. Oil pressure, manifold pressure, cylinder head temperature. The needles are in the green. Barely. The canopy slides shut. The world goes muffled. Now it is just her and the vibration. She releases the brakes. The P-38 lurches forward. She taxis out of the hangar and into the white void. The wind hits the plane broadside. The tail booms sway. The snow is horizontal. Visibility is less than half a mile. This mission is critical. This is the ALSIB route, the Alaska-Siberia Air Road. These planes are not staying in Alaska. They are being ferried to the Soviet Union. Stalin needs fighters to hold off the Luftwaffe on the Eastern Front. Every hour counts. Every plane counts. But for Cochran, the stakes are different. She is carrying a heavier payload than ammunition. She is carrying the reputation of every female pilot in America. If she crashes, the headlines won't say pilot error. They will say woman fails. They will say girls can't fly. The program she has been fighting for, the Women Airforce Service Pilots, will be strangled in its crib. She lines up on the runway. The lights are faint yellow blurs. She pushes the throttles forward. The Allisons scream. The plane accelerates. 60 miles per hour, 80, 100.
The rudders bite into the air. She corrects a slide. The ice on the runway is treacherous. 110. She pulls back on the yoke. The nose lifts.
The main gear breaks contact with the earth. She is airborne. She retracts the gear. Thump, thump. The plane cleans up. She climbs into the darkness. But she is not safe yet. She is flying into a cloud bank. The temperature drops further. She watches the leading edge of the wing. She is looking for the killer. Ice. Rime ice. It builds up on the wings. It destroys lift. It adds weight. It can turn a fighter plane into a brick in seconds. She checks the wing. Clean, for now. She levels off at 10,000 feet. The stars come out above the clouds. It is beautiful. It is lonely. To understand why she is here, alone in the dark, risking her life for a country that won't even let her vote on military matters, we have to go back. We have to strip away the uniform. We have to strip away the fame. Jacqueline Cochran was not born. She was forged. She was an orphan, or maybe she wasn't. She never really knew. She was raised in the sawdust and dirt of the Florida Panhandle. Poverty wasn't a condition for her. It was a predator. It hunted her. She had no shoes until she was 8 years old. She worked in a cotton mill at 10. She saw people broken by labor. She saw women trapped by biology and economics. She made a vow. She would never be hungry again. She would never be powerless again. She learned to cut hair. She learned to talk. She learned to hustle. She changed her name. She invented herself. By the 1930s, she was the head of a cosmetics empire. She was rich. She was famous. She dined with first ladies. But money wasn't enough. She needed speed. She learned to fly on a dare, and she discovered something. Up there, in the thin air, nobody cared where you came from. Gravity doesn't care about your pedigree. The wind doesn't care about your gender. The only thing that matters is skill. She became the fastest woman alive. She won the Bendix Trophy. She beat the men. She shattered records like cheap plates. Now, the world is on fire. The Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor. The Germans are marching across Europe. The United States needs pilots. General Hap Arnold, the head of the Army Air Forces, has a problem. He has thousands of planes coming off the assembly lines, but his combat pilots are needed in the Pacific and Europe. He has nobody to move the planes from the factories to the bases. He needs ferry pilots. Cochran went to him. She pitched a radical idea. Use women. Let women fly the domestic missions. Let women fly the trainers. Let women fly the cargo. Free up the men for combat. The generals laughed. They said women were too emotional. They said women couldn't handle the physical stress of a B-17. They said menstruation would cause them to crash. Cochran didn't argue. She flew. She took a bomber across the Atlantic to prove it could be done. She forced their hand. And now, she has her program, the WASP, Women Airforce Service Pilots. But it is a fragile victory. They are civilians. They have no rank. They have no benefits. If they die, the military doesn't pay for the funeral. If they are captured, they have no protection under the Geneva Convention. They are ghosts in the machine. Back in the cockpit of the P-38, Cochran checks her compass. She is drifting. The magnetic interference near the pole is playing tricks on the needle. She has to navigate by the stars. She looks down. The clouds have broken. Below her, there is nothing but black water and jagged ice, the Bering Sea. Suddenly, the right engine sputters. The needle on the manifold pressure gauge drops. The plane yaws violently to the right. Cochran slams the rudder pedal. She fights the stick. The P-38 wants to flip on its back. If she spins now, she dies. She scans the instruments. Fuel pressure is fluctuating. It's the cold. A fuel line is freezing up. She has seconds to fix it before the engine starves completely. She reaches for the crossfeed valve. Her hand is shaking, not from fear, from the vibration. She is alone, she is invisible, and she is falling. But the real threat isn't the ice in the fuel line. The real threat is sitting in a warm office in Washington, D.C., holding a fountain pen, preparing to sign a document that will ground her entire fleet forever. The engine coughs again. The right engine of the P-38 coughs. It spits, but it catches. Cochran's hand is still on the crossfeed switch. She forces the fuel from the left tank into the starving right engine. The pressure stabilizes. The manifold gauge climbs back into the green. The propeller bites the air again. She breathes. One breath. That is all she allows herself. She lines up with the runway lights at Ladd Field. She drops the gear. The tires screech against the frozen tarmac. She taxis to the ramp. The canopy opens. The Arctic air rushes in, freezing the sweat on her back instantly. She has delivered the plane. The Russians will take it from here. They will paint red stars over the white stars. They will fly it into the meat grinder of Stalingrad. But for Cochran, the mission is not over. It never is. She walks into the operations shack. She pulls off her leather helmet. She shakes out her hair. She doesn't ask for coffee. She asks for the casualty report. Because while she is fighting the ice in Alaska, her pilots, her girls, are fighting a different war back home, and they are losing. To understand the disaster that is coming, you have to understand the job. The public thinks the WASPs are glamour girls. They think they fly sunny cross-country trips in brand new planes. The newsreels show them smiling in cockpits, waving to the camera. That is a lie. The WASPs are the trash collectors of the Air Force. When a plane is too old for combat, they give it to the women. When a plane is fresh off the factory line and hasn't been tested, they give it to the women. When a plane has a glitch that killed the last 2 male pilots, they give it to the women. They are the test dummies. Let's go to Camp Davis, North Carolina, summer 1943. This is not a ferry base. This is an artillery training school. The heat is oppressive. The air is thick with humidity and mosquitoes. The mission here is tow target. It sounds simple. You fly a plane, you drag a long fabric sleeve behind you on a cable. The boys on the ground, green recruits with 50 caliber machine guns and 90mm anti-aircraft cannons, shoot at the sleeve. They are supposed to hit the sleeve. But these are rookies. They are nervous. Their aim is bad, and the sleeve is only a few hundred feet behind the plane. The pilots at Camp Davis call it the Singed Wings Club. They are flying A-24 Banshees. These are dive bombers that were rejected by the Navy. They are tired. They are heavy. Their engines are worn out. Cochran sent her best pilots here. She had to. The male pilots refused to fly these missions. They said it was suicide. They said the planes were death traps. So Cochran sent the women. She told them to show the men how it's done. But there is a variable she didn't account for: sabotage. Not by German spies, by American mechanics. The ground crews at Camp Davis resent the women. They hate taking orders from them. They hate that these women fly better than they do. And resentment, mixed with laziness, is a lethal cocktail. One morning, a WASP climbs into her A-24. She does her pre-flight check. She checks the rudder. She checks the ailerons. Everything looks fine. She takes off. She climbs to 500 feet. Suddenly, the stick goes dead in her hand. She pulls back. Nothing. She pushes left. Nothing. The plane rolls over. It is a graceful, slow-motion death roll. The investigation reveals the truth. The control cables had been chemically weakened, acid, or maybe just sugar in the gas tank, or rags stuffed in the intake. The incidents start piling up. Mabel Rawlinson, a ferry pilot. She is at Camp Davis for night training. She is flying an A-24. It is pitch black. The runway lights are dim. On return, her plane clips the tree line. The A-24 slams into the ground. It breaks in half. The front half, the cockpit, tumbles into the brush. The silence is broken by a sound that every pilot fears more than death: the whoosh of igniting fuel. The cockpit is engulfed. Mabel is trapped inside. The canopy is jammed. The fire truck arrives. The crew jumps out. But they don't rush to the fire. They stand back. Why? Because the fire chief hears the ammunition cooking off. He thinks the pilot is a man. He thinks it's a combat pilot with full racks. He doesn't know it's a training flight. He doesn't know it's a woman. By the time they realize, it is too late. Cochran gets the call in Washington. She grips the receiver until her knuckles turn white. But the tragedy of Mabel Rawlinson isn't just the crash. It isn't just the fire. The real disaster happens the next morning. The Army calls Mabel's family. They say, "We are sorry for your loss." And then they say, "We cannot pay for the funeral." Because Mabel Rawlinson is not a soldier. According to the United States government, she is a civil service employee. She is a secretary with wings. She has no GI insurance. Her family gets no gold star. They cannot even put an American flag on her coffin. It is against regulations. This is the failure point. This is the moment the system breaks. The surviving WASPs at Camp Davis are in shock. They are grieving, but they don't have time to mourn. They have to pass a hat. They walk around the barracks with a jar. They collect nickels and dimes from each other to pay to ship Mabel's body home. Think about that. These women are flying 1,000 horsepower war machines. They are towing targets for live machine gun fire. They are dying in the service of their country, and they have to beg for spare change to bury their dead. Cochran flies to Camp Davis. She lands her plane. She walks onto the flight line. She is furious. She confronts the base commander. She demands an investigation into the planes. She demands better maintenance. She demands respect. But the commander shrugs. They're just girls, Jackie. Maybe they shouldn't be flying. It is a slap in the face. It is a dismissal of everything she has built. And it gets worse. In Washington, the winds are shifting. The war is turning. The Allies are winning. The Army doesn't need as many pilots anymore. The male pilots are coming home from their tours. They want their jobs back. They want the ferry routes. They want the easy flying. And they see the WASPs sitting in those cockpits. The smear campaign begins. Columnist Drew Pearson writes a hit piece. He claims the WASPs are incompetent. He claims they are wasting taxpayer money. He claims Cochran is a tyrant who is just playing soldier. The letters start pouring into Congress. Send the girls home. Back to the kitchen. Cochran is fighting a two-front war. On one front, she is fighting gravity, mechanics, and sabotage to keep her pilots alive. On the other front, she is fighting the United States Congress to prove that her pilots even exist. She needs a win. She needs a miracle. She needs to prove once and for all that a woman in a cockpit is not a liability. She needs to show them that a woman can do what the men cannot. She needs the B-17. The flying fortress, the heavy bomber, the plane the Army said was too physically demanding for a female pilot. They said you needed the upper body strength of a linebacker to fly it. They said a woman would exhaust herself just trying to bank the wings. Cochran knows this is the pivot point. If she can conquer the fortress, she can silence the critics. But time is running out. The bill to militarize the WASP is stuck in committee. The votes are slipping away. She heads to the flight line. She finds a B-17, 4 engines, 30 tons of aluminum and guns. She doesn't just want to fly it, she wants to tame it. But as she approaches the plane, she sees something. A fluid leak under the number 3 engine. Oil? Hydraulic fluid? No, it's fuel. The plane is bleeding, and she is about to light the fuse. The sabotage at Camp Davis was just the warm-up. The real test is about to begin, and this time, the whole world is watching. The B-17 Flying Fortress is a lie. The name suggests a castle, a bunker in the sky. It suggests safety. It suggests stability. But to a pilot, the B-17 is a wrestling match. It is 30 tons of aluminum, fuel, and high explosives. It has 4 Wright R-1820 Cyclone engines. It has a wingspan of 103 feet. But here is the secret. Here is the thing the Army manuals don't tell the public. The B-17 has no power steering. There are no hydraulics to move the ailerons. There are no hydraulics to move the elevators. When you pull back on the yoke, you are not opening a valve. You are physically pulling a steel cable that runs the length of the fuselage. You are fighting the wind. You are fighting the slipstream. You are lifting thousands of pounds of air pressure with your own biceps. The Army Air Force's Surgeon General had a theory. He wrote a memo. He said the female body was incapable of flying the Fortress. He said women lacked the upper body mass. He said that in an emergency, an engine out on takeoff, a woman would not have the strength to kick the rudder over. The plane would spin. The crew would die. It was a biological argument. It was science. And it was about to be dismantled by a 5'3" orphan from Florida. Summer 1943, Gander, Newfoundland. This is the jumping-off point, the last piece of North America before the long, dark flight to England. The base is a sea of mud and fog. It is crowded with bombers waiting for the weather to clear. But one bomber isn't waiting for the weather. It is waiting for a miracle. Tail number 42-3081, a brand new B-17G. It is destined for the 8th Air Force. It is needed for the daylight raids over Germany. But it is sitting on the hard stand, cowlings open, oil dripping on the wet concrete. The mechanics are baffled. They are good men. They know these engines. They have changed the spark plugs. They have swapped the magnetos. They have flushed the fuel lines. But every time they run it up, the number 3 engine surges. It hunts. The RPMs spike, then drop. It is unflyable. The base commander is pacing. He has a quota. This plane needs to leave today. Then, a sound cuts through the fog. A high-pitched whine. The roar of a Packard Merlin engine. A P-51 Mustang drops out of the clouds. It touches down. It taxis to the ramp. The canopy slides back. Jacqueline Cochran climbs out. She is wearing her flight suit. She is wearing her lipstick. She walks toward the crippled bomber. The mechanics stop working. They wipe their hands on rags. They look at her. They look at the plane. They look back at her. The silence is loud. "What's the problem, boys?" she asks. The lead mechanic, a sergeant with grease under his fingernails and exhaustion in his eyes, sighs. He doesn't salute. He points a wrench at the engine. "She's a lemon, ma'am. Carburetor shot. We're waiting on parts from the States. Gonna be a week." Cochran looks at the engine. She listens to the memory of the sound she heard while taxiing in. The surge, the drop. She knows engines. She doesn't just fly them. She feels them. "It's not the carburetor," she says. The sergeant blinks. "Beg pardon?" "It's the turbo supercharger," she says. "The wastegate is sticking. It's carbon buildup. The valve isn't closing, so you're losing boost pressure at high RPM. That's why she's surging." The sergeant laughs, a short, dry laugh. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I've been working on cyclones since '39. It's the carb." Cochran doesn't argue. She doesn't yell. She climbs the maintenance stand. She reaches into the nacelle. She finds the wastegate linkage. She pushes it. It sticks. She looks down at the sergeant. "Get me a wire brush and a can of solvent," she orders, "and get this bird ready for run-up." 10 minutes later, the carbon is gone. The linkage moves freely. Clear prop. The starter whines. The huge propeller turns. The engine catches. A cloud of blue smoke. Then a steady, rhythmic roar. Cochran pushes the throttle forward. The needle climbs. 2,000 RPM, 2,300 RPM, 2,500 RPM. Steady as a rock. She cuts the engine. The propeller slows to a halt. She climbs down. The sergeant is staring at the ground. He is embarrassed. He has just been schooled by a woman who isn't even technically in the military. "Load it up," Cochran says. "I'm taking it up for a test flight." The sergeant's head snaps up. "You? Ma'am, this is a heavy bomber. The colonel said—" "The colonel isn't here," she cuts him off. "I am, and I need a co-pilot. You coming, or do I fly it solo?" They take off. This is the moment of truth. This is the physics exam. The B-17 rumbles down the runway. It is heavy. It is sluggish. Cochran pushes the 4 throttles forward. Her left hand grips the yoke. She doesn't fight the plane. She talks to it. The muscle myth is just that, a myth. Flying a heavy bomber isn't about brute strength. It is about trim. It is about aerodynamics. It is about anticipation. If you wait for the wing to drop, it's too late. You have to feel it dropping before it happens. You have to roll the trim wheel. You have to balance the forces. She lifts the tail. The main wheels leave the ground. She climbs. She banks. She executes a steep turn. The sergeant, sitting in the co-pilot's seat, is white-knuckled. He is waiting for her to fail. He is waiting for her arms to give out. She looks over at him. She smiles. She takes her hands off the yoke. The plane keeps banking, perfectly stable. She has trimmed it so perfectly that the massive bomber is flying itself. See, she shouts over the roar of the engines. She's a lady. You just have to treat her like one. She lands the plane. She taxis in. She shuts it down. The crew is waiting. The skepticism is gone, replaced by something else. Awe? Fear? Maybe. She has proven the point. She has proven that skill outweighs gender. She has proven that the biological impossibility was just a lie men told themselves to feel important. But as she climbs out of the B-17, wiping oil from her hands, she doesn't feel triumphant. She feels a cold knot in her stomach. Because she knows something the sergeant doesn't. She knows that winning the argument in the air is easy. The laws of physics are consistent. Gravity is fair. The laws of Washington, D.C. are not. While she was up there, proving the impossible, a telegram was traveling through the undersea cables. A message from General Hap Arnold's office. The Committee on Civil Service has made a decision. The Comptroller General has reviewed the WASP program. He has reviewed the requests for militarization. He has reviewed the benefits. And he has found a loophole. Cochran walks into the operations shack. The radio operator hands her the slip of paper. She reads it. The color drains from her face. It's not a rejection. It's worse. It's an eviction notice. Washington, D.C., June 1944. The telegram was just the first tremor. The earthquake hits in the halls of Congress. The Ramspec Committee. It sounds boring. It sounds bureaucratic. But to the 1,074 women flying for the United States Army, it is a death panel. The war has changed. The Luftwaffe is crumbling. The desperate shortage of pilots that birthed the WASP program is over. Now there is a surplus. Male civilian flight instructors are losing their jobs as training schools close. They are facing the draft. They are facing the infantry. They want the cockpits back. And they have a powerful lobby. They have unions. They have voters. Jacqueline Cochran stands before the committee. She is not wearing a flight suit. She is wearing a tailored dress. She is wearing pearls. She is trying to play their game. She presents the data. Gentlemen, she says. Her voice is steady, but her hands are clenched under the table. My pilots have flown 60 million miles. They have delivered 12,000 aircraft. They have 38 fatalities. They have a lower accident rate than the men. The chairman, Representative Robert Ramspec, looks over his glasses. He doesn't look at her data. He looks at the gallery. It is filled with angry men, displaced pilots. Mrs. Cochran, he says, emphasizing the Mrs., the question is not whether they can fly. The question is whether they should. Is it right to have women in uniform when men are available? It is a moral argument masquerading as policy. It is the same argument used to keep women out of voting booths, out of universities. The verdict comes down like a guillotine. The bill to militarize the WASP is defeated. The program is not just denied status, it is canceled. The date is set, December 20, 1944. The WASP will cease to exist. But the war isn't over, and the dying isn't over. Let's go back to the flight line, October 1944. A WASP named Mary Webster is flying a BT-13 Valiant, a basic trainer. It's a routine flight, but routine is a dangerous word. She is over the California desert. The engine seizes. The plane goes down. She crashes. She survives the impact, but she is pinned in the wreckage. The rescue crew arrives. They pull her out. She is badly burned. She is in agony. They rush her to the base hospital. And here is where the civil service designation turns from an insult into a weapon. The base doctor looks at her chart. He looks at her status. Civilian. He hesitates. He has limited supplies of morphine. Penicillin is rationed for military personnel only. He has to make a call. Does he use the precious antibiotics on a civilian contractor, or does he save it for the soldiers? He treats her. Of course he treats her. He is a doctor. But the hesitation is there. The bureaucratic friction is there. And when she dies, because she does die, the friction turns into a wall. Her body is sent home. The army sends a bill to her parents. A bill for the transportation of the corpse. This is the cost. This is the price of the experiment. Cochran knows this. She feels every death. She writes the letters herself. She pays for the coffins out of her own pocket. She fights the army to let the women be buried with an escort. But she is losing. The final days of the WASP are a strange, melancholy twilight. The women know it's over. They are still flying. They are still delivering P-51s and B-29s. But the joy is gone. They are training their replacements, men who have half their flight time and none of their experience. On December 7, 1944, 3 years to the day after Pearl Harbor, General Hap Arnold addresses the last class of WASP graduates at Sweetwater, Texas. It is a dusty, windy day. The wishing well, the fountain at the center of the base, is dry. Arnold stands at the podium. He looks at the women. He knows he has failed them. He knows the politics beat him. You and more than 900 of your sisters have shown that you can fly wingtip to wingtip with your brothers, he says. If ever there was a doubt in anyone's mind that women can become skillful pilots, the WASP have dispelled that doubt. It is a nice speech. It is a eulogy. 13 days later, December 20th, the gates close. The women turn in their parachutes. They turn in their goggles. They are told they can keep their uniforms, but they must remove the insignia. They are no longer pilots. They are just women again. They buy their own train tickets home. There is no GI Bill for them, no college tuition, no VA loans. No veteran status. They go back to being secretaries, teachers, housewives. They pack their logbooks in attics. They hide their photos in shoeboxes. They stop talking about the time they flew a B-17 across the Atlantic, because nobody believes them. You flew a bomber? Men would laugh at dinner parties. Sure, honey, pass the potatoes. They become invisible. But Jacqueline Cochran does not fade away. She is angry, and anger is a fuel. She goes back to the desert. She goes back to the speed. In 1953, she straps herself into a Canadair Saberjet. She takes it up to 45,000 feet over Edwards Air Force Base. She points the nose down. She pushes the throttle. She dives. The Mach meter climbs. 90, 95, 99. Boom. A sonic boom. The sound of a barrier breaking. She becomes the first woman to break the sound barrier. She climbs out of the cockpit. Chuck Yeager is there to shake her hand. She is a legend again. But it's hollow. Because while she is breaking records, her girls are still ghosts. They are getting older. They are getting sick. And the government still says they never served. Cochran spends the rest of her life lobbying, writing letters, testifying. She dies in 1980. She never sees the victory. But she planted the seed, and seeds, even in the desert, eventually grow. The fight isn't over. It has just moved from the cockpit to the courtroom, and the clock is ticking again. The WASPs are dying of old age. If the government doesn't act soon, there will be nobody left to pin the medal on. 1977, Capitol Hill. A new generation of women is in the Air Force now. They are flying jets, and they are told they are the first. The surviving WASPs hear this, and they have had enough. They open the shoeboxes. They dust off the logbooks. They put on their old uniforms. They don't fit like they used to, but the spirit is the same. They march on Washington one last time. 1976. The United States Air Force makes an announcement. They issue a press release. It is glossy. It is proud. It declares that the Air Force Academy is accepting women for flight training. It states, in black and white, that these young cadets will be the first women in history to fly United States military aircraft. The first. The word hangs in the air. It travels over the wire services. It lands on breakfast tables across America. In a small house in California, a grandmother reads the newspaper. Her hands are arthritis stiff. She puts down her coffee cup. She walks to the closet. She pulls down a dusty box. Inside is a leather flight helmet, a pair of goggles, a logbook that documents 1,200 hours of flight time in B-17s, P-47s, and P-51s. She reads the newspaper again. The first. It is not a mistake. It is an erasure. The government didn't just fire the WASPs in 1944. They classified the records. They sealed the files. For 30 years, the history of the WASP was buried in the National Archives, stamped restricted. To the world, they never existed. But the grandmother is not alone. The phone lines start buzzing. The network reactivates. They are not young anymore. They are in their 60s and 70s. They don't fly Mustangs anymore. They drive station wagons. But the fighter pilot spirit doesn't age. It just hibernates. They organize. They don't have the internet. They have stamps. They have typewriters. They have rage. They find an unlikely ally. Barry Goldwater, the senator from Arizona, Mr. Conservative, the man the liberals hate. But before he was a politician, he was a pilot. He was a ferry pilot in the war. He flew the same routes as the women. He remembers. He remembers landing a P-47 in a crosswind, sweating, terrified, only to see a WASP land the same plane behind him, cool as a cucumber, checking her makeup in the rearview mirror. He takes the floor of the Senate. He doesn't use polite language. I flew with them, he bellows. I ferried planes with them. And frankly, they flew better than I did. He introduces a bill. GI status for the WASP, retroactive recognition. The opposition is fierce. The Veterans Administration fights it. The American Legion fights it. They are terrified. They say, if we let the girls in, who's next? The Merchant Marine? The Civil Air Patrol? They call it a raid on the Treasury. They say these women were just civil servants. They say they didn't experience combat. They didn't experience combat? Tell that to the family of Cornelia Fort. She was flying a civilian plane over Oahu on December 7th, 1941. She saw the Zeros. She saw the rising suns on the wings. She was the first American pilot to encounter the Japanese air fleet. She survived that day, only to join the WASP and die in a mid-air collision in Texas 2 years later. Tell that to the 38 women who came home in pine boxes. The hearings are brutal. The women testify. They bring their logbooks. They bring their orders. They show the scars on their bodies from crashes the government said never happened. November 1977. President Jimmy Carter sits at his desk. The bill is in front of him. Public pressure has turned the tide. The first press release backfired. It woke the sleeping giant. He signs the bill. The WASPs are no longer civilians. They are veterans. It is a victory, but it is 33 years late. Jacqueline Cochran is there in spirit, but her health is failing. She dies 3 years later in 1980. She dies knowing they won the status, but she misses the honor. Because veteran status is a legal term. It means you can be buried in a national cemetery. It means you can go to the VA hospital. But it doesn't mean hero. That fight takes another 30 years. 2009. The WASPs are disappearing. They are in their 90s now. Every month, there are fewer Christmas cards, fewer voices on the phone. The United States Congress decides to correct the final oversight. They vote to award the WASP the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor the nation can bestow. March 10, 2010, the Capitol Rotunda. It is a cathedral of democracy. Statues of presidents and generals look down from the walls. The room is filled with wheelchairs. 200 surviving WASPs have made the trip. They are frail, their hair is white, their hands shake. But they are wearing their uniforms, the Santiago blue jackets, the berets. They look like an army of ghosts. The Speaker of the House stands up. The Air Force leadership stands up. They don't talk about civil servants anymore. They talk about pioneers. They talk about the P-51s and the B-17s. They talk about the ice and the fire. They present the medal. It is gold. On the obverse, the face of a female pilot. Her eyes are looking up. On the reverse, the three planes they flew. The AT-6, the P-51, the B-17. And the inscription, the first women in history to fly American military aircraft. The lie of 1976 is finally erased. The truth is cast in gold. One of the survivors, Deanie Karish, rolls her wheelchair to the microphone. She looks out at the crowd. She looks at the generals who are now saluting her. She doesn't cry. She smiles. It is the same smile Cochran had in the cockpit of the P-38. The smile of someone who knows they have beaten the odds. "We didn't do it for the glory," she says. "We did it because our country needed us." So, what is the verdict? History is not a straight line. It is a spiral. It circles back. Jacqueline Cochran and her 1,074 pilots proved a technical truth. The plane doesn't know who is flying it. The engine doesn't care about your gender. The wind doesn't check your ID. But they also proved a darker truth. Courage is not enough. Competence is not enough. You can be the best pilot in the world. You can break the sound barrier. You can save the war effort. But if the system decides you don't fit the narrative, you will be deleted. The WASPs were the ultimate forensic mystery. We found the body of their service in the wreckage of 1944. We had to work backward for 70 years to understand how it got there. We found hubris, we found prejudice, we found sabotage. But we also found iron. Today, when a female fighter pilot climbs into an F-35 Lightning II, she is not alone in that cockpit. She is sitting on the shoulders of an orphan from Florida. She is strapped in with the belts of a woman who burned to death in a trainer in Texas. She is guided by the hands of grandmothers who fought the Pentagon from their kitchen tables. The ice has melted, the fog has cleared. The record is corrected. Jacqueline Cochran, tail number 4411161. Status: mission accomplished.